up the side of the trees. The monkeys took their little monkey paws and they wrapped them around the branches, and the monkeys tore the branches from the trees. How the branches above their heads, and the monkeys looked down at the man, and the monkeys all said, they did not give the man his hats back. Do you think the man was happy? The man was not happy. The man was not grumpy. The man was not cross. The man was not angry. The man was furious. His body was full of rage and bile. He was so steaming angry that his lips went tight and his jaw went tight and his eyes went tight and his shoulders went tight and his fists went tight and his elbows went tight and his knees went tight and his toes went tight and his bottom went tight and his hips went tight and his tummy went tight, and he said, oh no, I'll never get my hats back. What's the point anymore? And he picked up his own hat from his own head and he threw it on the floor and said, I give up. I'm never going to sell hats ever again. You know, and I know that what a monkey sees, a monkey does. And the monkey's all looks down at the man, at this grown up having a tantrum down there on the floor. And the monkeys all started to make this sound. And the monkeys all took their hats off their own heads. And they all threw the hats on the floor as well. Top hats, bobble hats, bowler hats, boaters, baseball hats, bonnets and balaclavas too, all came raining down around the man. He didn't notice though, because he was too busy. Oh, Mum, tell her. No, get my hats back. It'd be so mean. Until a top hat came down and hit the man on the ow. He looked up. He looked down. He looked all around. And what did he see? All around him on the floor again. Hats. It's precious, precious, precious hats. Oh, my hats, he said. He wiped his eyes. He wiped his nose. Quick as a parrot's squawk, he picked up every single hat and put them back into the cart. Once the cart was back up the right way again, of course. Into the cart went top hats and bubble hats and bowler hats and boaters and baseball hats, bonnets and balaclavas too. And if you look next to you, down the side of the sofa, or under the cushions, or under the rug on the floor, you will find a real pretend hat, or maybe even a real hat. And if you want to, I've got the card here. You can pick them up and just throw them at me. Carefully. Chuck them all into the cart. Top hats, bobble hats, bowler hats, boaters, baseball hats, bonnets and balaclavas too. All back in the cart. When the cart was full again, the man picked up those two smooth handles of the cart, lifted them high, and carried on walking along the long, straight, dry, straight, boring, straight, dusty road until he got to market. And when he did get to market, he did sell his hats. Every single one of them. It was a good day. And if you are ever near Cambridge, or Saffron Walden, or Bishop Stortford, or Dunmow, you can come to the market there and you'll find him, the man that sells hats. Or you can go to the market in your closest town. And you'll find him there too. The man that sells hats, sometimes he sells socks and gloves as well. Sometimes scarves in the winter to keep you warm. And you can buy a hat from him. You can try them on and give him some money for one. But if you do see him, just do me one favour. Don't ever mention monkeys to him, because he still gets really, really upset. Everything has a beginning, everything has a middle, and nearly everything has an end. But this is the end of that story. Give yourselves a wonderful big clap. Oh my goodness.
Thank you, Janina. And for those that have just joined us on Facebook, which we managed to get up after some technical difficulties, tonight's teller is Janina Vigors. We give her a big round of applause. And if you want to get the whole of that story, go to the worldstorytellingcafe.com and at the end and press a little recent performances, catch-up stuff, all that sort of thing. Right now, I'm going to hand back to you, Nina, who's going to tell us another story.
Another one! Thank you so much. Yes, Claire, thank you so much for putting in the chat there that story was my version of a wonderful story from India called Monkey See, Monkey Do. This story has been with me for a very, very, very long time, and it's a story very close to my heart because it's a story about food, about eating. It's something that I like to do quite a lot, sometimes more often than I should, really. But this story, amazingly, also happened way, 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 way back. Right in the beginning of everything, there lived a dear, sweet, kind old lady. Oh my goodness, she was as sweet as honey in her heart. Her eyes were as sparkling as yours, Claire. Her smile was as sweet as yours, Norman. She did have a little bit of a glint of mischievousness in her soul as well, and her spirit, just like you, John. She was the loveliest, kindest, sweetest old lady that you have ever met. But like all good people in these sorts of stories, as sweet and lovely as she was also equally as poor. She didn't really have much money, but that was okay. She was happy with how she lived. She lived in a small cottage in the middle of the forest. And every single day she would pick up all of her laundry, all of her dirty clothes and sheets, and bundle them all up and put them under her arm, and bustle with them all the way down to the river. And she walked the same way every single day. She'd go past the first bend, and on the first bend there was a beautiful tall tree. And as she passed the tree, she'd stop just for a moment and look up to the top of the tree and say, good morning, tree. And the tree almost seemed to wave back to her as the breeze blew through its branches. She'd carry on her walk as she'd round the next corner. And on the next corner, there was a large stone. And next to that stone, strangest thing, there was always a very small frog just waiting to cross the path. And she'd stop and she'd get down on her hands and knees and she'd say, good morning, frog. And the frog always seemed to croak his hellos back to her, he would say. And she'd carry on her way. And as she got to the edge of the river, she would stop and not even start her washing and her laundry in the river until she'd said hello to Bluebird. Good morning, Bluebird. He always flew overhead exactly the same time every single day. And only then, when she'd finally seen Bluebird, would she then start her washing. She'd get all the sheets and she'd plunge them into the river. Wonder if you have any real pretend sheets, you could plunge them into your river as well. She'd plunge them and she'd rub them together And she plunged them again and rubbed them together and plunged them for a third time and held them up to the sunlight as it was streaming through the gaps in the trees, just like it is here now. She'd hold it up, and when she could see that the sheet was clean, she'd lay it out to dry on the large, flat, very conveniently placed rock next to her. And she'd do that with all of her laundry. This particular day, I think it was a Wednesday, she rounded the first corner. "Good morning, tree," she said. She rounded the second corner. "Good morning, frog," it said. She rounded the second corner and got to the edge of the river. She looked above and waited and waited and waited a little bit more, and Bluebird didn't appear. "That's strange," she thought. "Mind you, it is springtime. Maybe he's got a nest somewhere, and he's gone to collect extra caterpillars and worms for his babies. Yes, yes, I'm sure that's what's happened." Okay, never mind. Oh, but eventually, Bluebird did fly over. "Good morning, Bluebird." There he was. He had something in his beak, though. She thought maybe it was a worm. And as he got directly overhead, Bluebird opened his beak and dropped the something he was carrying. It fell down and down and down and down and down and down and landed right there in front of her feet. "Oh, Bluebird, you've dropped your..." But he didn't stick around, and he didn't come back. "Oh," she thought, after looking at it really quite closely, it was a seed. Look, small and round and flat and a strange dark grey colour, green almost. Let's see what happens. So she did what needed to be done with seeds. She took a finger and made a little hole in the ground and covered it up. And then she watered it, some water from the river. She patted it down. She cared for it. Every morning when she came back, she cared for that seed, and she sung to it, and she talked to it, and she looked after it. Cared for it for a day, a week, a month, a whole year. And at the end of all that time and all that caring, guess what it had done? You need to guess, you know. It had grown. Because that's what seeds do. It grew up and up and up and out and out and out. And in the middle of all that growing, there was the roundest, the shiniest, the most perfect, fat, juicy, orange pumpkin you've ever seen. Oh, she got quite excited. It was ripe and ready. She reached into her apron and took out her little pocket knife, because all good old ladies in stories like this carry pocket knives, and she cut it from the vine. She lifted this enormous pumpkin up because she was uncharacteristically strong, and carried it all the way home. And when she got home, she put it on the table in the kitchen and thought about all the delicious things that she could make with this pumpkin flesh. Oh, she thought, I could make a spicy pumpkin soup. Oh, that would be lovely. Or maybe I could make a warming pumpkin stew with dumplings. Or maybe I could make a pumpkin curry, or maybe a pumpkin pie. Oh my goodness me, with custard or cream. That would be nice, she thought. She opened her drawer and found the biggest knife that she could find in her kitchen, and she cut into the pumpkin with gusto. If you want, you can help her, because it's a really big pumpkin. You ready? The pumpkin fell in two. And I don't know if you have ever put your hand inside a pumpkin before, a real one, and pulled out everything that's inside. It's a bit slimy, and it's a bit sticky, and it's a bit icky, and it's a bit bleh. But inside this pumpkin, you're never going to believe this, there was a bowl of warm, steaming pumpkin soup, already made, with a hunk of bread next to it, and a spoon just sat there in the pumpkin. And then next to that, there was a dish of pumpkin stew with dumplings. And then beyond that, there was a small dish, a metal dish of pumpkin curry. And a pumpkin pie with that lovely lattice crisscross pastry work and custard and cream all inside the pumpkin. There was my favourite food in there as well. Pumpkin ice cream. There was pumpkin milkshake. There was a roasted pumpkin, sauteed pumpkin, mashed pumpkin, absolutely everything. There was your favourite food in there as well. Wow. The old woman couldn't believe it. And what she especially couldn't believe was the height of the chocolate and pumpkin cake that was sat right at the back. It's enormous. Well, of course, the only thing that the old lady could possibly do was to eat. And eat. And eat and eat. And she ate for a day, she ate for a week, she ate for a month, she ate for a whole year. And try as hard as she might, she just didn't have space in her tummy for that enormous chocolate and pumpkin cake. So, do you remember I said she was a dear, sweet, kind old lady? She took that cake and she took it around to her next door neighbour's house to share it. She got round there and knocked on the front door. Now, I'm going to move that. I don't know. That's going to make it. Oh, that's okay. She knocked on the door 3 times. And if you've got something at home you could knock on the door 3 times as well. Are you ready? Things always happen in threes in these sorts of stories. The door opened just a tiny crack. What do you want? Said her neighbour. Oh, there's something I forgot to tell you. As dear and sweet and kind as our old lady is, her next door neighbour was mean and miserly and unkind and cruel. What do you want? Said her neighbour. Oh, I've got a chocolate and pumpkin cake for us to share. I can't possibly eat it all myself, you see. So, and I got it from the inside the pumpkin. And the pumpkin came and it had all sorts of food in it. And the pumpkin came because the bluebird gave me a seed because I always say hello to bluebird. And, come in, she said. She opened the door a little wider. And dear sweet kind old lady went in with her cake and they sat down across the table from each other and they ate and they talked and they talked and they ate and they ate and they talked and they talked and they ate. And at the end of all that eating and all that talking, dear sweet kind old lady took the plate, went back home, and the mean neighbour slammed the door behind her and said, I'm going to get a pumpkin seed like that for myself. Just you wait and see. So the mean old lady did exactly as the kind old lady did. She retraced her steps. Except, do you remember I said she was mean and not very nice? Quite unkind. When she went round the first corner on the way down to the river, she saw the tree, but she was so mean, she just ignored it. She didn't say hello or anything. And as she rounded the second corner, she saw the frog. She kicked some dry, dusty soil in its face. Oh, she was so mean. When she got down to the water's edge at the river, she waited for that bluebird until she saw him flying overhead. She kept one eye on the bird, reached down, felt on the ground, and picked up a small, smooth, round pebble. And with accuracy that is almost unbelievable, she threw that stone and boom! It hit the bird, and the bird fell down and down and down and down, landed in front of her feet. She said, picked up the bird by one leg and said, you're coming home with me, and carried him home. When she got home, she flung him into the corner and said, there, you better get better. She thought she ought to, give him something to eat and drink. So she managed to find some dry, stale breadcrumbs and some old dirty washing up water. There, she said, you better get better. You know what? After all that that uncare, all that ignoring, the bird did get better, because that's what wild animals do. They're very good at looking after themselves. It got better. And his wing wasn't quite the same, but it was functional. And at the end of all that healing, the mean old lady picked up the bird, said, right, back to the river for you. And she took it back down to the river, flung him into the air. The bird flew off. She came down to the river the very next day and waited. I'm waiting for my pumpkin seed. Where's my pumpkin seed? I'm going to get my pumpkin seed. Ah! She saw Bluebird flying overhead, and Bluebird did have something in his beak. And he did open his beak when he was straight overhead. And the something fell down and down and down and down and down, landed in front of the mean old lady's feet. And she picked it up, and it was a pumpkin seed. Oh! She dropped it on the floor, kicked some soil over it, watered it. She ignored it for a day, week, month, year. And at the end of all that ignoring, the seed had grown, because that's what seeds do, despite everything. It had grown up and up and up and out and out and out. And in the middle of all that growing was the fattest, juiciest, roundest, orangest pumpkin you've ever seen. The mean old lady took her pocket knife, picked it, and took it all the way home. I got my very own pumpkin. She put it on her table in her kitchen, thinking of all the delicious food that would be inside just for her. Oh, maybe there'll be some roast beef and dripping. Maybe there'll be spotted dick and custard with a really thick skin on it. Maybe there'll be some Brussels sprouts and kale. Oh, that would be delicious. Yum, yum, yum. She cut into the pumpkin. Boom. And out from the middle of the pumpkin crawled spiders, buzzed flies and wasps and bees and earwigs and cockroaches and worms and ants and all the biting, crawling, stinging things of all the world. They crawled up her arms and up her legs and around her shoulders and into her hair and into her ears and up her nose and into her mouth. And she said, ah! And she ran. She ran from that house. She ran and ran and ran and ran and ran for a day, ran for a week, ran for a month, ran for a whole year until, well, I think she's probably still running now. Everything has a beginning. Everything has a middle. And nearly everything has an end. And this is the end of that story that was given to me by the wonderful storyteller Jan Blake. Give yourselves a wonderful, lovely big cuddle, or rub of your heart, or rub of your hands, or clap. Thank you so much. You've been wonderful.
You,
Oh, well.
Janina, it's been a wonderful evening.
Oh, thank you. Oh, I've had lots of fun. I haven't told those stories for quite some time, so it's been lovely to give them an airing again.
Oh, well, what have we got coming up? I know what we've got coming up this Sunday. Victoria, who joined us late, actually, but Victoria, you can catch everything up on catch up if you go to the site. What have we got coming up this Sunday? You are all invited to tell a story at the Worldwide Story Round at 6 o'clock in the evening, as usual. Mike Rust will be hosting from Get a Word in Edgeways, so do come along and tell a story. Next Friday we have Marion Leaper from the East Anglian Storytelling Festival, and then we'll have someone for the few weeks after that, and then on the 17th, of course, we're coming from the East Anglian Storytelling Festival live and direct. Meanwhile, have a wonderful week. I might see you all on Sunday, possibly, or some of you. King Louis, have a fantastic week.
Thank you.
We have to ask this question. Shall we have Janina back, Louis?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Of
Why not?
course. Yeah, well, I have to ask that question. We have to do. Louis is my litmus test. So, meanwhile, have a great week, everyone. Thank you, everyone who came on live. Thank you, everyone who's been listening. Those who came late on, we were late on Facebook, go and see us on Catch Up. Right. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone. You've been wonderful.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for your tales.
Thank you,
you.
John.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
Welcome.
Thank
And
you.
thank you, Waleed, for flying
Bye.
the magic carpet.
Thank you, Elise.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, Louis.
Bye.
I wish I could have heard more, Janina, but hopefully I'll see it on Catch Up. But that was great. I loved that.
Oh, thank you, Raina. Oh, yeah, we had a few issues with Facebook as well. So, yeah, sorry about that. Technical difficulties.
Great to hear you. Thanks. Hope
You're
to-
welcome. Thank you.
Bye.